Welcome to episode 53 of Trek Live. We are back. It's been a long time. Um, but Bill and I are both chomping at the bit to kind of jump into talking about some Trek. So,
Yeah,
that being said, Bill, what are we talking about today?
we are picking our ideal StarFleet Academy professors from the Star Trek universe in a couple of different fields, which is really cool. I love that we can do like more targeted, serious conversations like Star Trek 3 last time we were on, and we'll do stuff like this here and there too. And it's been a while since we did something kind of outside the box and different like this, and I've been really looking forward to it. So definitely eager to talk about this. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it. I don't know about you. Some tough choices.
Yeah, it's very tough.
I changed a bunch of times on a couple of these. Some of them I locked in on pretty early and kind of stuck with my gut pick. But there's no shortage of good options in any of these fields. So really eager to hear what other people have to say. Anybody who's in the chat today, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on Twitter. People responding when questions are posed about medical science or engineering. We got all kinds of responses that kind of covered the gamut, and I think every character that was possible was kind of picked at least once. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and this topic stems from kind of an early episode where it's kind of like a build your own crew type of topic that we did, which was really fun, depending on the type of circumstances and stuff. But this one is a little bit different, but also has some fun creative roots. So I'm both excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. I love building off of stuff we did earlier. That was one of my favorite episodes to kind of prep for. I think it was like our third or fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of similar to this. The options are like overwhelming for like picking a first officer and an engineer, things like that. And this is like you said, a different spin on kind of the same sort of idea.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes you put a different hat on and think about it a little differently.
Yes.
So, but before we get started with even anything that is like official, I think something kind of changed in your life since the last time we did this. So what's going on? Like, how do you feel?
So you guys don't know.
What's that on your hand?
That's why I've been gone and got married. So thank you guys for all the support and everything. I had an amazing time. Yeah. I got a new roommate, I guess.
Yeah. Long-term roommate.
No, it's been good. I'm excited to, once all the dust is kind of settling, get back into my rewatch, and I've got a bunch of podcasts to catch up on. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you had a good time. I've seen some pictures, and they're ridiculously, insanely gorgeous. But I'm glad you're back. I'm glad that we can kind of get right back into the routine and build on what we've been doing. And I'm excited to keep going.
Yes.
So. Yep. Yeah. So obviously you haven't had a lot going on with a rewatch.
Yes.
You've been a little busy.
Yeah, that's had to shove that for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's not a whole lot happening there. I've watched a little bit of Enterprise season 3, but we can save that for a later time. There's other more pressing things that I think we got to touch on real quick before we get into our topic of the week. To say the least. So if anybody's in here watching this, if they care enough about Trek to watch Trek Live, I'm sure you're aware that the showrunners for Star Trek Discovery are no more. They were dismissed for HR-related reasons, it sounds like. Sounded like it was a pretty rough situation. Did you read the article on Trek Core, Dan? Like, you kind of following along?
I've just briefly looked over it, yeah.
Yeah. So the article talks about the first episode of the second season being like way over budget, ballooning, and issues in the writer's room were, I guess they were maybe a little bit abusive, a little rough. I mean, what do you think? I don't know how much there is to say, really, other than it's unfortunate. Like,
it's tough kind of being on the outside of
the
kind of situation. I don't want to get too speculative what happened. It just kind of sucks. and it's frustrating because like I would really, 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 really want just one season of kind
I
of
know.
dramaless
Mm-hmm.
discovery, and yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that season's going to be season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first thought too. I was really looking forward to, having kind of a season where there was like a singular kind of vision, coming from, showrunners who were in place and, crafted the whole thing from the beginning and guided it all the way through it. Because I think even those of us who really love season 1, which I think we both do, it's pretty undeniable that like the people that were actually executing the first season were not the ones who had the idea. Like that was an idea that came from Brian Fuller, who then moved on, and people had to kind of pick up and run with the existing stuff.
Right.
And the cool idea about season 2 was that it was going to be a little more naturally built by people who are going to be doing the show. And we're kind of in a similar situation with maybe a little bit further in. Brian Fuller left pretty early into the project, but I think I read in the article that they're filming episode 5, and they're taking like a couple weeks off to, I guess, catch their breath and figure out what they're going to do going forward with the change in showrunner. So the first 5 episodes, I guess, are going to be, credited to those 2 showrunners, and moving forward 6 and beyond will be Alex Kurtzman, who's been on the show all along. Is a known Trek commodity. He's a co-writer on 09 and Into Darkness. Was kind of in that team that brought Trek back to life with Kelvin Timeline. And again, has been, was a co-writer on the pilot and has been there all along. So it's not like they're bringing in a fresh face that hasn't been involved at all. They're kind of shifting some roles around, I guess. So like you, it's kind of hard to speculate. We don't know what was going on in the room. We don't know how much it affects, the day-to-day, story of the show, like how much we're going to see on screen that would be affected by this. I'm sure it's, really impactful for the people that are working on the show. There's no doubt that if you're, employed by that production, this is probably like a seismic, like earthquake that's going to really shake things up. But on the other side of the TV, just watching it, who knows how much we'll really know. The early days of TNG had this kind of stuff all the time. People were coming and going, and showrunners changing.
That was my next point. This is not new to Trek. They've had these types of things happen. So at first I was a little bit scared, but like you said, I remembered TNG, and
you watched Chaos on the Bridge, right?
Yes.
Documentary. Yeah, that pretty well highlights the tumult and the chaos, for lack of a better word, that was going on in that production for the first 2 seasons. And so, like you said, this is no new thing. History is kind of repeating itself with rocky start for Trek coming back on the air from a behind the scenes perspective. So we'll see. What gives me a lot of confidence too is that the people that are on the writing staff, the Ted Sullivan and Bowie Kim and Erica Leopold, I think are their names. They wrote Into the Forest I Go. They're really active on Twitter, really know their Trek stuff. They go to conventions. They do video podcasts with Garrett Wang and Aaron Eisenberg and talk about Star Trek history and stuff. So there are people that are there that know what they're doing and care about the stuff. It's not like they're, letting people go who care about Trek and who knows who they're bringing in. There are people there who I think are invested in it for the right reasons. So I'm not too worried about it. We'll just have to see how it plays out. And I'm choosing not to, become doom and gloom about this.
We gotta stay positive about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who knows what? Yeah. Just have to wait and see.
Yep.
Cool. So now that we kind of got that out of the way, we got our obligatory touch on Star Trek news out of the way. Let's dive right in. Do you have a field that you kind of want to go into first? One that
I don't. Talk about? I've just had I don't know. I guess alphabetical. I think I have it.
Okay.
But I mean, you can whatever you want to do. You can jump around.
I have engineering on the top of my list, and I think
so do I.
Okay. So who would you want to take a class taught by? in the
Uh,
engineering field? I know you love engineering, so
yes.
this is probably a topic near and
Um,
dear to your heart.
I would like to do Trip Tucker.
Hmm.
He, um, I think he's very passionate, and I think that kind of in my experience in school, I thrive on a very passionate, um, teacher or professor.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of why I kind of went that way. I think it's a good balance of kind of practical, kind of staying
Yeah,
by the book, but also, MacGyver, um,
absolutely.
MacGyver. And kind of my final point is that um, to me, his engineering like philosophy is he's always trying to push the limits,
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of a cool thing to kind of instill in your students. So that's something I would
cool.
like to kind of be a part of and adopt, I guess, if I were a student. So that's kind of my big three of why I chose Trip Tucker. Yeah.
It's a really good pick.
Yes.
He was really hard for me not to pick because I think
Mm,
he's probably my favorite character of these bunch. Like if I had to pick just my favorite overall Star Trek
mm,
character
yeah.
from the main engineers in
Mm-hmm.
Trek, he'd probably be my guy. But um, I could have gone with a lot of people here. I could have gone with Trip. I could have gone with Scotty.
Yes.
Um, any of them. But I picked B'Elanna Torres. I went Voyager.
Wow.
I love B'Elanna from the perspective of, you know, she was an academy kind of flunk out. She didn't do well in that setting, but once she got into like the practical, when she was given a chance to do it in the practical field, so to speak, she did flourish. And what I love about B'Elanna is because of the nature of Voyager being out there alone and having to push the limits, kind of like Trip did,
Mm-hmm.
and having to toy with all kinds of innovation. And she got her hands on slipstream drive technology
Yeah.
and played with that and transwarp stuff from the Borg. Like she's got a lot of experience that I think is probably unique to her experience being in the Delta Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think coming from the background that she does, being marginalized and discounted and not given maybe the credit she thought she was due. I think maybe a professor who overcame that and did succeed in the field that she's in would bring a unique perspective and that maybe none of the other engineers could bring. All those guys kind of went the traditional route. They were the best at what they did.
Right.
They got the golden job. They got Geordi and Scotty and Trip got the flagship.
Flagship.
You know, they're clearly the best of the best
Mm-hmm.
in their respective times. And they certainly would have a lot to bring to the table from that perspective. Like they were on the ship that was pushing the boundaries and got all the goods and the opportunities. But I love that B'Elanna, as a different take on it, would bring that outcast rebel mentality. I could see her relating to students that might be struggling a little bit and would maybe take the extra time to perk somebody up that might need it, or take a different approach to somebody who's not responding to the typical style. So she's my pick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that B'Elanna is a great pick because she's really relatable, like you said. Because I think that
relatable too. Yeah.
the worst students make the best teachers because they've
Mm-hmm.
done
Yeah.
everything. So I think
Yeah.
that can and that'll kind of go into my next pick. But yeah, I think B'Elanna's a great pick. I think.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Who would you have? Who would be like, to steal a term from like Trek Ranks, your secondary systems? Like if you had to pick a runner up to Trip, who would it have been?
I think it's Chief O'Brien.
Chief O'Brien.
Because
Yeah.
he's kind of like just the handyman, and I think he has like B'Elanna has a lot of experience, kind of mixing technologies
Sure.
and kind of
Yeah.
getting his hands on different technologies and kind of making them work together. And so I think he's got a lot of experience not in just engineering, but also just in just experience. He's been on the flagship, but also in
Mm-hmm.
this crazy place called Deep Space Nine, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. The other thing I love about Chief O'Brien too, that, if we got more specific with like the type of class you were taking, the fact that Chief O'Brien, half of his crew, so to speak, like on Deep Space Nine, were like Bajoran militia people, like not Starfleet officers. So he had to work with, the career-minded, Starfleet grunts who were just there doing the job, and he also was kind of in the same breath having to deal with people who were in what they were doing for very different reasons. These Bajoran citizens who, are at home doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, and Chief O'Brien did become a teacher at the Academy at the end of Deep Space Nine. That's where he goes off to. So, as Dad points out here, he actually has teaching experience, and this is kind of like one of the funky things with this. You can go anywhere, kind of in the timeline. Like, you can look at perspective anywhere in the, this is very nebulous here, where you can kind of do whatever you want, but. Yeah, by a certain point in time, O'Brien was probably the natural pick because he actually was a professor. But my secondary pick probably would have been O'Brien too. I definitely toyed hard with O'Brien for all the same reasons you did, having the mixed technologies and, like I was saying, mixed people. I think he, kind of like B'Elanna, is coming at it from a little bit of a different angle than maybe some of the others. But your pick, Trip Tucker, is right there too. Everybody knows me, knows I love Trip Tucker.
Yeah.
Cool. Where do we want to go next? Medical?
Yeah, we can do
medical.
Yes.
Cool. Who's your choice?
I went with Beverly Crusher. I just think there was a lot of great points made on Twitter. I just think that she is kind of the right combination of kind of loving and nurturing, but also she knows her stuff. And with her experience, not just on the Enterprise, but the head of Starfleet Medical, raising a son. I just think she's kind of the perfect medical professor, I guess. Yeah, specifically kind of intro to intermediate, for sure. Because that was a big debate on Twitter too. Is how do you
differentiate?
Differentiate
style of I went with Beverly Crusher too, and for a lot of the same reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, this is an overlap pick. She strikes me as somebody who's got an academic streak to her. She at least on a couple different occasions she talks about like writing papers that are going to be published and this and that. So she's clearly very into that world. I think it's up her alley. She does have that year, that season 2 year where she's off at Starfleet Medical doing what she's doing. That adds another set of experiences that I think are interesting. For all the same reasons you did though. Like she's loving, she's nurturing, she's approachable in a way that maybe some of these more curmudgeon-y characters like the EMH, like McCoy, maybe not as much. I think those characters are great if you're on their good side and they can relate to you and they take to you. But I could see if they don't, having maybe a little bit of a rough time with characters like that. And Crusher, I think, is kind of like the perfect professor. Like if I think about almost any of these characters, it's like who would make a good college professor out of the Star Trek universe? Dr. Crusher kind of comes to mind pretty quickly as like a natural choice. That's that one was one of the ones that actually kind of came to mind pretty easy. I see Grappler Zorn is saying Phlox. Phlox is a kind of an anomaly here. Like he could teach, his style of medicine is like a completely different thing. So I don't know if I'd want him for like, if I'm approaching these as like an early class, like 101 medical, 101 security or engineering. If I'm doing 101 medical, I don't know if Phlox is my guy. In something more like down the road, more in depth, like primitive, how to use leeches to suck you out a phaser infection or something. And like Phlox is perfect for that. But I don't know if I want my like ground level knowledge to come from Dr. Phlox, as much as I love him.
But that doesn't mean that's a great pick. So.
No, it's a great pick, absolutely. Yeah. Because if that's the style of medicine you want to practice, who better than Dr. Phlox? If you want to have the menagerie of alien animals in your sick bay and you want to go that way, he's the best.
Yep.
And unlike some of those other characters, Phlox, like Crusher, is somebody who is approachable and brings a different perspective, an alien perspective. He's all about open-mindedness and optimism and things like that. So he's that's kind of like his buzzword. So
yeah.
he would be probably a really fun, he'd teach a fun class, I'm sure. And he has like an academic streak to him too. So there are a lot of reasons that he's a good pick. Who would be your runner-up, your secondary?
Probably Dr. McCoy. I think.
Dr. McCoy. Yeah.
I think he would be a good kind of foundational into the medical field. Either universe.
Yeah. The thing I like, McCoy is probably up there. The thing I like about McCoy is he's kind of like the perfect bridge between like Phlox and the 21st century doctors. He does things that are. He's got a side to him that's very kind of primitive and throwback. I think of like episodes of TOS, and it's because it's a 60s TV show. But he pulls out like the old school, like 20th century style stuff that like the just bare bones, like simple medicine. But he's also forward thinking too. He uses technology and he's well rounded. I think he can approach it from all kinds of angles. Which is good, which is kind of what always draws me to these guys, like people who can cover the gamut and be well rounded. So McCoy's probably my runner-up. Like I said, the kind of tiebreaker between Crusher and McCoy at the end of the day was the approachable factor.
Yep.
McCoy is 100%. He's like the perfect friend in TOS for Kirk, but not necessarily for Spock. So it's like depending on what side you're on. It might end up being a rough few weeks. So like I said, that's a field that I had a little bit of an easier time. That was one that I kind of went with my gut pick, Crusher, kind of from the beginning. But there are no wrong answers, as our friend Jim likes to say over at Trek Ranks.
So what did you do? What was your tactical / security pick?
Tactical security, this is one that I really had a tough time with.
This was it was a tough one for me too.
I'm going back on what I was just saying about approachableness, and I picked Worf. I went with Worf, partially because he would make me laugh. I think his class would be funny in some ways, like his dry wit, like the things he says would. I know I would laugh a lot in any kind of setting with Worf. But I also kind of like B'Elanna. He comes at it from this kind of sort of Klingon perspective, like he's balancing Klingon instincts and that whole code with the Federation stuff that he's been brought up with and the humanity that he has in him from his upbringing. So again, I like that well-roundedness, different kinds of perspectives all in one package. I like the fact that if we're kind of going outside the box a little bit, I like the fact that he served under like Picard and Sisko. He has like both kind of like Picard and Sisko are two totally different styles of command and have different approaches to things. And if we're talking about Worf post Deep Space Nine, I love the idea of somebody who can call back to things that happened in tactical situations, battling the Borg at Wolf 359 with not with Picard because Picard's gone, but like in those kinds of situations in that era on Picard's ship and like fighting in the Dominion War with Sisko, and like from a tactical standpoint, I think he would bring a pretty wide range of experiences. But he is not the most approachable character in the world. I think of scenes in TNG where like I don't know what episode it was in. I can't like picture it, but he was in a bad mood or something, and somebody brought him a report. And he didn't like the way the report looked, so he freaked out and yelled at the poor little like female ensign and like sent her running back to the turbo lift and made her feel like she was 2 inches tall. So I'm sure things like that would happen in in a college setting. I can just imagine some of the things you get back from him would probably not be so nice. But I think you'd learn a lot from him. So I went with Worf. What about you?
Again, I went back and forth, but in the end, I went with Tuvok.
Tuvok.
Mostly because I think, doesn't he have Academy experience?
He does.
Yeah, so I went with that because he was like super experienced, and it goes back to my other main point is that it goes back to kind of the kind of the worst students make the great best teachers, and that Tuvok did struggle kind of with his Vulcan upbringing, so I think that he's relatable there. But with tactical and like security, I would rather have kind of a more tight knit, really by the book, just the way the nature of just tactical and security is.
Sure.
So that's why I went with Tuvok.
Yeah, and he certainly is that. Very by the book. The other thing I like about Tuvok a lot that definitely had me considering him was his longevity. Like, he was in Starfleet with Captain Sulu, like in the 23rd century on the Excelsior. Like, so he can, he's got that, and he's got being on, in the 24th century kind of setting with the Voyager and all that. So he has another one who's got like a wide range of experiences, and kind of like what I was just saying with Worf, who has the Picard side and the Sisko side. Tuvok has even a more extreme example of that with two different eras. Grappler Zorn saying Ash Tyler, which is a unique pick. Cool pick.
Great pick.
He like Worf can bring a little bit of a Klingon element to his approach. A little bit more of a conflicted Klingon, like a little more of a big unknown. Ash Tyler is definitely an interesting guy who I hope we get more of in the future. That might make him an even better pick. So we'll see. Who was your runner-up? Was it Ash Tyler?
No, it was Worf.
It was Worf. Okay. Yeah. Mine was Tuvok. I thought for a few minutes about Reed, but the thing that rubs me wrong about Reed, and it makes him a good character. I think like it's good for TV. It makes for good drama. Like, I'm watching the 3rd season now, and he's battling with the Makos, and it definitely brings a different element to the show, and I like it a lot. His insecurity about like his position and the way people look at him. But I think that's so present in his character. That's like his constant battle, like his insecurity and social anxiety, I guess, that I don't know that he would make a good professor, really. Like, I can't imagine. I'm sure college professors are out there who struggle with those things and are always battling that. But Tuvok and Worf, for example, are very sure of themselves. They know what they know, and they're confident and are comfortable, I think, in that kind of setting, where I'm not sure Malcolm necessarily would be. So I like the character Malcolm Reed, but I think I'd steer away from a class taught by him if I had a choice with these other great characters.
Okay.
What do we have next? Science, right?
Yes.
Who is your science officer of choice?
I went with Spock because to me, he's like just the ultimate science character. I think he's got a lot of experience. I think that's kind of a common thread throughout all our picks is the experience. And I think just his growth with trying to see his human side and explore that, I think can relate to being a college professor. And so that's why I kind of picked him.
Yeah, I think Spock's an obvious. Like, he's not who I picked. I steered away for reasons I'll get into in a second. But like, Spock is a clear choice. Like, he is in a lot of ways the perfect college professor, I think. So his range of experience is certainly like vast. He's a genius.
Not just in science. That's
not just in science.
reason,
Exactly. Yeah. He's somebody. He's like clearly the type of college professor that I think I would get attached to very quickly and would just want to talk to and
Yep.
like and learn from as much as
Yeah.
possible. Like I wouldn't want to just be there in his class. I'd want to, hang out in his office and hear stories and get his perspective on things. But I didn't pick him. I picked science specialist Michael Burnham because the thing that I might like best about Spock is the double-sided, the human Vulcan element. Kind of like I kind of briefly talked about with Alana. I don't even know if I really went into it, but of course, like her battle there brings different perspectives. And Worf, I talked about that, but Spock certainly has that, but Michael does too. And I think the tiebreaker between Michael and Spock is that approachability. Michael has that. She has the Vulcan background and the logic and has that side to her and can speak to that side, but has a warmth and a humanity that Spock has, but is much more repressed. So I can't argue the Spock pick at all because you're right. I mean, I've said many times, he's like right at the top of my list as far as like fictional characters of all time. And of course I would want the class with Spock. But Michael obviously comes from we don't know a lot about Michael yet as far in comparison to some of these other characters, but she has quite an experience to draw back on, getting knocked down and having to bring herself back up and battle through people's perceptions of her. Yep. Yeah. Kind of like B'Elanna. So I just something about that kind of arc, that redemptive quality, having to redeem yourself and pull yourself back into that kind of position appeals to me from a college professor, because I think they'll relate to people in a different way than people who kind of had it come easy, all the time. They were just the smartest, the best, and had a straight line path to wherever they got. I like that Michael has a lot of the same qualities Spock has, but also has that edge too that might bring a little bit of a different perspective. So I feel kind of funny. It's always like, I think moving forward as we do these kinds of topics where you're like picking characters from like any corner of Star Trek, while Discovery is so new and young, I think it's always going to be like this question of like, Discovery is so much less content and it's still like a work in progress. You don't have the full picture of the character yet. So it's tough to like get yourself to pick a Discovery character over some of these more developed, longer running characters. But maybe it's because it's more current and I'm thinking about her a lot. Michael Burnham kind of came to mind pretty quickly with the science officer, along with Spock. To kind of skip ahead, Spock was obviously my runner-up. But since you picked Spock, who's kind of like a really obvious choice for all the reasons you kind of talked about, who was your runner-up? Like, who was your secondary pick?
I struggle with my secondary pick. Michael Burnham was up there for me too, also. But I didn't know what to do with 7 of 9 because to me she doesn't feel like a science officer. She was kind of more like a Swiss Army knife to me. She did like literally everything. So that's why she wasn't really on my list, or number 1, I guess.
Right. Yeah. 7 of 9 is definitely tailor-made for our next couple of categories, like the elective.
Yes, very much
approach, where you can kind of pick something that doesn't necessarily fit in a clean box. 7's one of those characters for that. It doesn't have necessarily a specific fit, but I like the instinct to kind of maybe lean towards science. Astrometrics is kind of her home. That's certainly something in the science. You picture somebody with a blue uniform working in astrometrics. If it was like a Starfleet officer who was a chief of astrometrics, clearly that's going to be a blue uniform. And that's pretty much her primary duty. But you're right. Like, she kind of moves around as needed. She's equally involved in when the situation calls for it, like tactical and security, like, or whatever the situation calls for. She's very involved in engineering. often to B'Elanna's displeasure. Like she doesn't really want her in there most of the time, but she's in there a lot doing stuff.
Mhm.
So you're right. She's a Swiss Army knife for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we both picked 2 electives, right?
Yes, 2 electives.
2 electives.
Yep.
How many different like was this difficult for you to like pare down? Yeah.
So hard. I feel like I have
Me too.
like so many secondary system picks that
Yes.
yeah, it was
We
tough
could
to nail down to 2.
we could go a long time. Like you could easily do this show and just do electives. Like just pick.
Yeah.
Like, don't do categories and just do whatever classes you want.
Yeah.
But that's a little less realistic, I think, in terms of like what the real college experience kind of looks like, where you have to kind of fit classes into boxes, especially early on.
Yeah.
But it would certainly be fun to pick
Mhm.
5 or 6 elective, like anything you want, classes taught by whoever kind of fits in that field or in that topic. But what's your first elective that you actually went with?
My favorite one that kind of got me most excited. Maybe even like over my whole, over my core and my electives. So I enrolled in Advanced Ship Design 404, taught by Ben Sisko.
Nice.
If you guys remember, he served at Utopia Planitia for a while. So I think that would be a fun topic, but also I think a great kind of class where there will be ship design, but there will also be more because Cisco does have a lot of experience in command and stuff like that. So I think that would be a great, really fun course that got me really excited.
That's right up your alley. I didn't expect that one. Like that's something I didn't think about, but it makes perfect sense for you to have thought about that.
Yeah.
And Cisco's perfect for that. Like he commanded the Defiant, which is like this anomaly, one-off ship that nobody could figure out, and he kind of did. Like he made it work. And yeah, you're right. He had experience at Utopia Planitia, and that's in his background. So he's perfect for that. And he could teach a class just on, like NX class prototype.
Yes.
Practical experience with those kinds of ships through his experience with the Defiant, because the Defiant at the early stages, like in season 3 when they first get it, and the search is like the ship's gonna rip itself apart. Like we can't do anything with this thing. Like O'Brien's like, it's too powerful for its own good. It's just a matter of time. It's a ticking time bomb. And Cisco and O'Brien kind of together make it work and figure out how to manage it, and it turns into quite the little ship.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a great pick. I love that. And I would want to take that too. You said 404?
404. So it's high level for sure.
High level.
So.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Cisco would not do any less, I'm sure.
Yes.
I went with a 101 for my class, my first elective. And this is kind of selfish of me, because this is something I actually really do want to learn about. Like this is something that, like in the real world, like in Bill Mann wants to learn more about this. I went with Mycelial Network 101, taught by Paul Stamets.
Yes.
I want to know more about how this thing works. I have like the most vague kind of sort of like, I kind of know sort of what this thing is and how it's supposed to work, but it's so new and different. And yeah, I just want to know. And I think Paul Stamets would be a difficult professor for sure.
Yes.
He's pretty serious and tough. But I would battle through it to learn more about the Mycelial Network, and I'd want to sneak in before it all gets classified and tucked away in some sort of Section 31 file, never to be heard from again. Like I'd want to be in that little maybe window of time where it's maybe accessible to be learned about. So yeah, that's probably the first thing that came to mind, because it's the thing that I want to learn the most about in real life in terms of like Star Trek technology. Not that, of course it's all fictional technology, but it's the piece of technology that I think I understand the least about, like kind of how it might possibly work in the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
So Mycelial Network 101.
That's
Taught
a
by Paul
great pick.
Stamets.
I think it would be an awesome class. I think that Stamets, yes, would be a difficult professor, but I feel like he's so wrapped up in his work. He's so
Yes,
passionate about his work. I think it
absolutely.
would make for an awesome, awesome class. So
Yeah, his like big speech in Context is for Kings when he's on the shuttle is kind of all about like that's what he'd rather be doing, like being an academic and like testing it and going through that whole process and teaching it, and instead of having it out in the field and being used in that kind of setting. So that speech is kind of something I think about a lot, and I thought about immediately when we kind of started thinking about this topic. Like he's somebody who fits, I think, really cleanly in that box, in that academic world. I think that's basically what he was saying in that big scene in Context is for Kings. That's where he needs to be. That's his natural spot, more so than on a ship out there exploring space, fighting the Klingons, all that stuff.
Yeah.
What was your elective number 2?
I went with, I couldn't think of a clever type of a title for this, so I went with Pushing the Limits of a Shuttle 202, taught by Tom Paris. I think
Nice.
He's one of those guys like you talked about with B'Elanna. He is one of those, in his career he went kind of an unorthodox route. So I think, and I keep harping on this, but kind of the worst students make the best teachers. I think he would, and shuttlecraft operations always kind of interest me, and I think it would be really, really fun. And to me, he might be the best helmsman in the universe. So if you want to be the best, you got to be taught by the best, or something like that. So I think that'd be fun. So yes, pushing the limits of the shuttle 202.
Love it.
Yeah.
He could talk all about flying warp 10 in a shuttlecraft.
Yes.
Which is an experience that only Tom Paris could really talk. Really.
Yeah. Or hustle or a hustle and game of pool. It's just you don't know what you're gonna get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That suggests raising lizard babies 301. Could be like the next step of that class. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. Didn't think of that either. So, but Tom Paris is like perfect for all the reasons you just said, like kind of along the lines of B'Elanna and Worf and some of our other picks here, where his career approach, the path he took, I think would set him apart and maybe make him a really good teacher, and especially for struggling, students who don't go that straight line. I think he could really get through to people who maybe need that unconventional approach.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool class. And yeah, I love shuttles. I love, that anytime anything takes place on a shuttle, it's really cool. And good stuff. My second elective was, I guess this would be, I don't know what field this would be. Like in my college, it would go under like communications, because we didn't really have a film program.
Right.
But 20th century film taught by Trip Tucker.
Yes.
All of his movie night experience.
This is a great pick.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I love. I'm a film guy, just like you are. And Trip Tucker is obviously a film guy. He's the master and master of ceremonies at movie night on the Enterprise, and picks all kinds of really cool stuff, outside the box stuff. He showed Frankenstein and all three of them, I think, the original Frankensteins, and he showed The Day the Earth Stood Still to the co-janitor. Like, he's clearly got good taste, well-rounded taste. Yep. And I think it would be really cool to be like in the 23rd century or the 22nd century, and get that perspective on like
1950s film.
Yeah,
or 20th
exactly.
Film.
Yeah, absolutely. Like how do movies like that say about us, like in the 20th century, 21st century? And I'm stealing from you. You picked Trip Tucker for engineering, and this is my little cheat to get a class with one of my favorite characters anyway. I might not take a class for him with him in engineering, but I'm sneaking one in there as an elective. And I think he'd be the coolest in a setting like that. Like he'd be awesome in an engineering class, but talking movies with Trip Tucker, like, come on, like what more, what more could you possibly want? So yeah, and he's got well varied taste too. Like he showed, like I said, Frankenstein and The Ear Stood Still, and I think in one of the movie nights, there was like The Wages of Fear, which is like a French like thriller from the 50s. So he's got it all. Like he knows all kinds of stuff, and yeah, I think it'd be a fun, different kind of class.
Yeah.
And if we're talking electives, you know, we're supposed to have a fun elective here and there, and that'd be a fun break, I think, from the routine. What are some of your what other things popped into your head when you were thinking about electives?
I could go on forever. Hollow photography from the Doctor. Delta Quadrant Cuisine from Neelix. There's a bunch of great not electives, but fun topics on Twitter. I think there was
tons of them.
Engineering and Scotch, taught by Scotty. Just a bunch of great electives.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a ton. I think you know, managing a crew's morale with Neelix would be cool. The cuisine, obviously, with Neelix would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, I think somebody on Twitter I saw suggest holography with Reg Barkley, but obviously, like, nobody knows a holodeck better than him.
Friendzone 101 by Chakotay.
Friendzone 101 by Chakotay is perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, there's no end. Like, you know, religion and science with Ben Sisko has to constantly walk that line.
Yeah.
I think he'd be great for that. Yeah, there's no. I mean,
you do music.
I'm on the spot right now, but
yeah, you do anything.
Anything. Yeah.
So many.
I like the engineering at Scotch.
Yeah.
Scotty, that's perfect. Yeah. Managing expectations, I think somebody said for Scotty is perfect too.
Yeah. The time. I get that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There's tons and tons. Like 7 of 9, you could almost do anything. Like 7 of 9 could literally teach anything.
Yep.
Any possible anything she could get away with.
Yes.
So yeah, I thought this was a really fun topic and different. It definitely, I think, accomplished what we kind of set out to do, which was to kind of take that early episode where we kind of just picked our favorite people in each role for a given situation. This is kind of forcing us to, like I said, put a different hat on and do that a little differently. And it was good. I picked some characters that I probably wouldn't have picked in almost any situation, but if you put yourself in like that academic, you know, learning environment, some different characters come to light. Yeah.
Yes. For me, this topic was made. I think Bill and I do a great, like, we have a great time talking about topics, but for me, it was the interaction from Twitter what made it great. I think this is one of our most kind of talked about topics. I think it's up there. I think there's just a lot of great conversation and discussion going on Twitter. So
from people who we don't typically hear from, which is really cool. Like there were a lot of first timers who are kind of chiming in on our you know, topic discussions that we try to get out there through the week, which was really cool to see. I love seeing new faces and people bringing all kinds of ideas. Like I said, like for the we asked about engineering, medical, and tactical, and over the last few days, and I think for all three of them, I think almost every character who could have possibly been named, you know, got named because we had that variety. We had a lot of responses and people coming at it from all different angles. I know every single engineer that you could have picked got picked. For sure. Tactical security, I saw people picked Groppler Zorn in here, picked Ash Tyler. He got some love.
Yeah.
Somebody out there picked Major Hayes from Enterprise.
Whoa.
It's a really deep cut, really cool pick.
Yep.
It's for tactical and security. Tasha Yar got some love. It was really cool to see, and that I agree with you. Like, this was really fun doing this, but even during the week, it was almost as fun. Kind of, I was at a conference for a few days and spent a lot of time kind of just sitting around and flipping through my phone, and it definitely made the time go by really, really quick. Reading all these responses and loving a lot of them. It was really, really cool, and I want to take a minute to just thank everybody who participated on Twitter through the week.
Yeah.
They did a good time.
Yeah, you guys make the show. You guys
Absolutely.
are awesome. Yeah.
It definitely helped me to think. Like, it got me, I don't know about you, but it kind of impacted my choices,
It
a
did,
little
for
bit.
sure, yep.
It steered me away or into different directions, just hearing the consensus out there and, different things people had to say.
Yep.
Definitely helped me to pick, what I ended up landing on. So, great stuff.
Yep.
Do we know what we're doing next week yet?
We will post on Twitter right after this about next week.
Okay.
I just gotta finalize some stuff with you. But
Sounds good.
I hope you guys had a great time watching. Bill and I had a great time doing this. Great topic, great responses. Let me know what your guys' class schedule looks like. Maybe down the road we'll do kind of like a sophomore year, another addition to this one.
Absolutely.
Down the line, which will be fun. The discussion does not have to stop here. Twitter is probably the best one. Discord is, to get Discord, it's down in the description. Yeah, great time. Great to be back. Excited to be back. Excited to be talking Trek again. Jumping on the rewatch. We got some big things coming in the works. We got special guests locked in, working on a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. So this next couple months are going to be awesome. So
yeah. Can't wait.
Yes. So yeah, this has been episode 53 of Trek Live. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep. See you around.